Hello, everyone, and welcome to this lightning lesson. So very excited to share this with you today. As it says on the box, so to speak, this is a lightning lesson. So what I'm about to go through is actually a course we usually run over 2 hours, but we are going to condense it down into 45 minutes. So I will be going lightning fast through this lesson. So please excuse the pun. And as mentioned, this is part of a bigger course series. It's called our AI Mini Bootcamp, and it's 8 courses we're running over 4 weeks, 8 live courses, going from introduction to programming to prompt engineering to RAG, agentic AI, classical machine learning, you name it, we cover it. And in addition to those 8 live courses we'll be covering through the month of April, we also have some other prerequisites. So if you want to brush up on your statistics, your math, anything you need for AI. So you go through this lightning class. Again, this is just a very a shorter version of what we cover in prompt engineering throughout these 8 courses. And we cover lots of important topics here, but do check that out. Our next cohort is starting actually next Tuesday, and we'll be having a course on Tuesday and Thursdays for the next 4 weeks. And some of you may already have done this. So this is something new. Prompt engineering is something new we're doing for 2025 and this second cohort. And also don't forget that ODSC East is coming up May 13th to 15th. And we would love if you could join us, either virtual or in person. We have got everything from free expo passes, which include keynotes, all the way up to our training, boot camp, and VIP passes. So check that out for various kind of passes here. And then I would like to say a couple of quick words around motivation, why I put this course together, because I am kind of fascinated by it. You may recall a couple of years ago, there was this viral post where someone was advertising a prompt engineering job for $350,000. I think Bloomberg wrote an article about it and everyone else picked it up. And it was considered a bit of a joke at the time, like, who would want to work as a prompt engineer? All you have to do is type some text into a chat box. Well, the world has moved on, and it's no longer a laughing matter, especially if you're paying that kind of wage or you're making that kind of wage. And I will talk more in depth about this, but both from my role at Cortical Ventures, where we use AI to surface the next cohort of AI startups we want to invest in, number one. We're also building out an AI stack there. How do we use AI to run a venture capital firm? And also with my role at ODSC, I get to talk to a lot of hiring managers and a lot of leaders in AI. And when I talk to those leaders in AI, one of the biggest things they tell me about what's the biggest barrier to AI. It's not necessarily budget. It's not necessarily talent, even though those are 2 big things. But usually the biggest barrier to rolling out AI in production is trust in AI, right? Do I trust the outputs of my AI? That's a big barrier. And then secondly, I talk to speakers, what are they excited about? Reasoning models, agentic workflows, RAG, LLM tuning, prompt tuning. That's another motivation. And even when I work, and then third and lastly, when I work with people on the creative side, it might be sales and marketing. When I work with engineers, software engineers, data scientists, AI engineers, the one thing all of those groups have in common is the importance of prompting, prompt design, and prompt engineering to those roles. So it doesn't matter if I'm in marketing, I'm in sales, I'm a VC, I'm an engineer trying to build an app. Prompting has become a very important skill. It's almost as ubiquitous as, let's say you're hiring an intern and you don't know how to use Excel. You'd be like, you don't know how to use a spreadsheet or Google Sheet, Excel. That's how important prompters come, number one. And number two is, as we'll see, most people are what I would call very weak prompters, because we get lazy, because as the AI gets better, the models get better, and it feels like we have to do less prompting, type in less text to do that. So my main goal today is to teach you a little bit about prompt design, teach you about prompt engineering. But really what I'm trying to do is to get you to have a mind shift, because prompt engineering is a skill where everyone assumes they know how to do it. But from my experience, I would say I would rank people between a 2 and a 5 out of 10. And as I go through this, it's going to start off very easy. It's going to start off very basic, where you're like, why am I wasting my lunchtime or whatever time it is, time zone you're on, my evening on this course? But because it's a lightning lesson, we're going to get into deep water very, very quickly. So let's see if you can, we're going to start off in the shallow end, so to speak. And then I will explain this image you see in front of you as well as we get on. So I talked a little bit about motivation, but let's get back here. So you know what prompting is. A prompt, as the name suggests, is an input that guides an AI model's output, right? And I view it more than that, because you may view it as typing into a window. But whether you're on the FOMO, the fear of missing out side, and are a tech optimist, or you might be on the FOBO side, which is fear of being obsolete. We won't go into that debate today. Check out our podcast. You can learn about that, much more than that. But whether you're a FOBO or a FOMO, it doesn't matter. My view, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, is that we need to learn to communicate with AI. So the first thing I always ask people is like, think beyond the prompt. You're not prompting. What you're doing is you're communicating with AI and all its variations. In a few years, we're going to be communicating with, humanoids and robotics and all that stuff. So I view it as communicating with AI. And it's a skill and a language you need to learn, right? And another issue we see is that as AI improves, so we saw GPT 4.0, or GPT 4, then 4.0, and then now 4.5 is out here. When I go to my ChatGPT interface here, I can see all the different models I can use here. I can use 4.0. I can use 4.0 scheduled tasks. I have a one reasoning model. I have mini. I have, where's my 4.5? Oh, there it is. March 30th. My God, I must have been using it way too much. I didn't think I was. But anyway, that's kind of funny. I guess I'm not doing any 4.5 demos today, even though I am a pro member, but I'm not the 200. I'm on that $20 a month plan, not the $200 a month. So as AI improves, it should this assumption that as AI improves, it should automatically understand me, even if I'm not being clear. That is just wrong. I see so many people doing that, because it's what I call the lazy prompting. I'm going to write in a line of text. I'm going to do misspellings like I do all the time. I don't care about my spellings. I'll do a short prompt. That assumption right there is wrong. And remember, for the most part, when you're prompting, there's no one looking over your shoulder. It's your own habit you develop. So see this little image here? This is AI, and it's trying to read this subject's mind, right? Or she's trying to read its mind. I don't know what I try to generate there. But AI cannot read minds. And go ahead, laugh or contradict that statement. Yeah, because you might have heard of Meta's Brain 2 query, where they have this big thing they put on your head. I think they have a patent for it, and it's actually just, it's what is it? It's pretty well established. The radio waves with the sensors you put on your skull. So, the Meta glasses haven't quite gotten there yet, but they can't read your mind. And this is the problem with AI, because you're assuming that as it improves, it can understand me better. And that's not true at all. So first, this is worth the price of admission. If you can dissuade yourself from that notion that as AI gets better, I have to do less prompting. I will try and prove to you through the course of this lesson that actually the opposite is true, right? Because what you have really here is you have this prompt quality versus model performance. So my theory, and a lot of other people's theory, is that this is just a very simple illustration. It's not necessarily true, but because it's more like an S-curve, as I show you later. But just imagine a linear regression line. The linear line, as you see, it's going up. It's positively correlated. As you improve your prompt quality, the models will perform better, because people are always benchmarking large language models, right? But that's the benchmark working at optimal inputs, and you are providing an input. So unless you provide an optimal input, it's not going to get its best performance from that. So I noticed that this does not start at the 0 axis, right? So if you look at model performance on the y-axis here, this is what we call the baseline, right? This is what you're getting for free. You can write any crap in there, and we'll at least give you something. Like write me a novel about mid-century musketeers, and it will spit something out, right? You're not giving them much direction. It's magic, right? That's why people were so enamored when ChatGPT 2.5 and then 3 came out, right? So you're getting something for free here. But where you want to be is at the top of the curve here. So this is what we call the floor. And yeah, so a lot of us were disappointed with 4.5 GPT 4.5 versus 4.0. It didn't feel like a 0.5 incremental increase, but it was an improvement, right, for certain things. So the floor has moved up, but it doesn't matter. As AI gets better, you're going to ask more of it, right? So you always want to be the top of that curve. So don't think like a lot of people I hear saying prompt engineering is going to be obsolete in a couple of years. I heard that last year. I don't believe it. I think it will evolve, become more important, and maybe the style how we prompt is going to become different. Maybe it's a voice prompt. Maybe we're providing images. Maybe we're providing full videos. I don't know how that will. Do not know how that will look, but I do know that there'll always be a baseline here where the average person can get a lot of results from AI, and there will always be people who are good at. Dare we call them the AI whisperers, people who can talk to AI, right? So I believe this is very key. And you may see that prompt engineering has become a job role now. We track job roles on LinkedIn, and we saw in 2023 there was 2,000 prompt engineers. Now there's 4,000, 4,500. That's over 100% increase. But that's not the point, because the point is I don't want to become a full-time prompt engineering, but I want to use prompt engineering. So what you have instead is it's become not so much a role, but a must-have skill, right? And I view this continuing, that it's going to be more important as a skill rather than a distinct professional role, right? And you are seeing it across all disciplines. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing, any kind of business, data science, ML engineers, and all the rest. And you know, the requirements of this skill are constantly changing. We just had reasoning models come out, right? When you're working with reasoning models, you need to use your token usage is different. And when you're using something like O1 operator, which is taking control of your browser, how you prompt that is different. If you're prompting in a chat window versus how you're prompting in an API, that's different again. So prompting went from being this very little thing to prompting in a chat window to having this range of prompting skills depending on the context and how you're using it. Are you using it through an API? Are you building an app? Are you doing it in marketing? Are you doing VC law and all that stuff? So it's an ever-expanding skill set depending on the domain you're in and what your job role is. So you might be an engineer, you might be in business, doesn't matter. This is a skill set that's expanding. And then I hate to disappoint you, but I don't have a definitive, I'll tell you the best to my knowledge what that skill set is currently, but it's changing pretty much. Whatever new models coming out is changing slightly. And, you know, we're still trying to define what a prompt engineer is or how someone communicates with AI, right? And yeah, it's applicable to many jobs, and it's going to be adopted widely. And a lot of hiring managers I talk to, so because when you talk to someone about, I'm a software engineer right now, everyone, if you're a software engineer, you should be getting a 20 to 30% boost in your coding skills with AI. If you're a marketer or a salesperson or whatever, similar, right? I don't believe it's always true. Sometimes I get a 10% boost because I'm spending so much time communicating with AI to tell it what I want that actually I feel like I'm going backwards. But leave that as it is. What's common is with everyone I talk to, doesn't matter if they're hiring a software engineer, like a software engineer is not an AI engineer. They're two different roles. But that software engineer should be able to use prompting to allow whatever they're using, Codium or Copilot, to generate code using AI. So their prompting skills become just as important as their coding skills, right? Because you need to have good coding skills to understand if it generated incorrect code. But the better prompting skills you are at, the more productive your coding will be, right? So that's our motivation. So let's talk quickly about what most of us do, which is prompting into a chat window. We call that prompt design, right? And we'll get to the prompt engineering, which is another discipline, a higher discipline. So let's talk about prompt design for a second. which is what most of us do in our day-to-day jobs, right? Prompt design encompasses a number of things. It's the process of crafting instructions to interact with our LLM, right? Now, it does require careful design instructions, context, and framings to guide our response. And we know this, like we know it. Just because we know it doesn't mean we do it, right? So it involves creating clear, concise, and specific instructions, providing relevant context to guide our AI responses, and structuring prompts for optimal output. Sometimes we want the output to be in JSON format, sometimes not. And then we want to use techniques to say, okay, you're a VC or you're a software engineer, tell us what you think here, right? So we know these techniques. And by the way, everybody, I will be providing these slides in a recording as well, so you can check out these slides later, because I'm not going to go through these slides like line by line as I am now. And role-playing examples, and this is how we want to maximize the performance of our LLMs, right? But the limitations of basic promptings are, I mentioned this before, a weak prompt. A weak prompt, they're vague, they lack context, and prone to unpredictable outputs, right? So summarize a meeting, who was president in 2024, write code for Fabinucci series. And also show you something else as well. There's even a worse part of that. So when you go to apps like Lovable, which I'll talk about a little more, there's another one I like as well called Rook AI, Rook app, where it says, make an Airbnb style app, right? Like we're encouraged to write very lazy prompts. You see it everywhere, right? But just because we're encouraged to do that doesn't mean we should do it, right? So these are what we call weak prompts, right? Strong prompts are clear, specific. So summarize the meeting with a paragraph, list takeaways, and provide next steps, right? Who was president of Ireland 2021? When is their term expiring? Because why am I asking this question? And if I want to write code for Fabinucci series, like how do I want to write? I want a Python function. And why am I asking to write? Because I don't understand how it works. So maybe you can explain to me step by step. So again, I know most of you know this, but you may know it, but you may not do it. Because you may feel like when I ask it this, the AI is getting so good that I didn't have to write these longer prompts. But in my experience, that's not the difference. And I am going to address this question. What's the difference between prompt design and prompt engineering? So prompt design is crafting a prompt, writing the actual prompt itself. And then prompt engineering is taking a programmatic, systematic way of applying those prompts in a way that's more deterministic. Like, so imagine when you're writing a piece of software, it's deterministic. If you run the software again and again and again, it'll produce the same output. Prompt engineering is how do you do this at scale? How do you incorporate this into workflow so you're not writing prompts all the time? Like, imagine you had an AI agent and you wanted to build it to check your calendar every day. You would first write a prompt to do that. Then you would take that prompt, inject it into that agent somehow, and then have it run. So we'll talk about that later, because this talk really is in two parts. The first is prompt design, then second is prompt engineering. So good question, AJ. And then, because a big problem we have with all kinds of prompting, prompt design, and prompt engineering is what we call the priming problem, right? Because we tend to ask ad hoc questions, and they work for simple queries. But let's say I want to know, give me a list of good exercises. Unless I give it the context, like how old I am, how regularly I exercise right now, twice a week, 0 times a week. Am I looking for low impact because I have bone spurs or whatever it is. So, give it some context. And when you don't do that, because imagine when you want to get to engineering, which I said before, you want to get repeatable results. If you don't give it context, first of all, the biggest problem I see is inconsistent results, right? When I'm doing that in a chat window, that's fine. But let's say I come up with a prompt to email 50 people or build a sales thing. If I don't give it a very strong prompt, you're going to get inconsistent results, which include hallucination. Sorry, that should be not systematic. A lot of prompting we do is trial and error. It's not systematic, right? Trial and error is great for when you're trying out to get the right prompt complex, but you don't want to start off trial and error, because if you want to move into prompt engineering, then trial and error does not work, because you'll be too much on the error side of that trial and error. And then how do you scale these to production? How do you get these into, say, a production environment? Because as we move into an agentic AI kind of environment, we're going to give the prompt once. The agent will act on that prompt repeatedly, multiple times a day, multiple times a year, right? So they have to be scalable. And, the big one here I see is lack of understanding. Like, why do certain prompts work better than others, right? That's a big problem. A lot of people just don't understand why some prompts work and some don't. That's kind of a big deal. And that's where kind of like the boot camp comes in. You have to understand how LLMs work, because if you want to be the AI whisperer, the AI wizard, you have to understand how it works behind the code. It's the same way if you want to use AI to write code. You don't have to learn codes now to write code, because AI will do it for you. But trust me, you need to be able to read code, understand code, and it's really good if you can write code if you want to use AI to, because again, it's not replacing our jobs, it's augmenting it, which I still think a lot of people get wrong. So prompt design, there's lots of frameworks around this. I'm going to show you one because I think they're fairly obvious, but there's one is called CoStar, there's Prompt, there's Clear, there's Crisp, Rail, Dara, they're coming up these days. This one is, I believe, from Amazon. It talks about context, objective, style, tone, audience. These are all common things to know. So I'm going to, because again, in the interest of time, I'm going to go through this quickly. I'm going to let you kind of study that yourself, because you should already know this because you've been using prompting for the last year or two. And if not, I apologize, because it's a lightning lesson, but I'm going to do that quickly. So what you want to do is you want to become a prompt wizard, right? And again, I know I'm talking about motivation before, but trust me when I say this, because I've seen this in practice. I've done it myself. And we used to talk about a 10Xer. So when we talk to startups, we always ask them, what problem is you're trying to solve? And when they tell us they're trying to solve a problem, we always say things like, well, you're building a better mousetrap. And that's a Silicon Valley no. If someone asks you, are you building a better mousetrap? They're kind of doubting that. Yeah, it's better. But how many times better it is? Like, if I'm going to go from ChatGPT or Anthropic, I use ChatGPT or Anthropic Perplexity. If I'm going to stop using Perplexity for search, I don't want something that's 50% better or even 2 times better. I want something that's like 5 times better, 10 times better. And so we talk about that as like, some software engineers, they're 10 times better, or some marketing people are just 10 times better. That doesn't mean that you have to be 10 times better, or everyone in the team has to be 10 times better. But what that means is if you apply more disciplined prompting and understand the advanced techniques in prompt engineering, you can actually get 10 times better results from models. And I know this is true because we've tried it in coding. We've done this in coding, and I'm not a 10X in coding. I'm probably well, first of all, I can build an app in 2 hours that used to take me, 3 weeks. So in one aspect, I am 10 times better. But in terms of maybe architecture and stuff, it's giving me maybe 1 or 2 times. But first of all, where do you get the 10X from? First of all, it's speed, right? But second of all, speed does not equal, building something quickly does not mean quality, right? So if you do good prompting with good prompt tuning, you can become that wizard and get 10 times more results from this. And I do believe this to be true. You can scoff at this, but again, I will give you some examples of this in a little bit. But if you go from simple prompt design to taking prompt engineering seriously, you will see a result like this. Because what we have is what we call the S-curve of prompt engineering, right? So again, this is something I made up myself, but S-curve is well known in learning circles, because when you learn, like if I want to learn, brush up on my Gaelic or Irish, or learn Spanish or German or something, I might have a few words of German, like zwei Bier bitte, which means I want to order 3 beers. It's about the only German I can seem to remember. Everyone starts in a plateau, or if you want to learn French and Latin, or Italian, Latin. We all start in a plateau when we learn, right? We all have some kind of, and the plateau is different for different people, right? So when you look at the history of prompt engineering, we start with simple questions, but we start to add context, the models perform better. Now we ask for structured formats and structured outputs, because what are we doing with those outputs, right? Are we just typing into a window and copying and pasting it into an email? Well, what if we get it into the email and the email structure, right? And now we've got reasoning models. We do chain of thought, tree of thought, and all these reasoning models. And then we've got multi-step workflows, like agentic AI is multi-step workflows. And at some point, this S-curve starts to tilt down slightly because it's the law of diminishing returns. But I want you to think about this graph here, because this graph really encompasses, because people always think with prompt engineering, they're here. When I hate to break it to you, because I'm about here. Maybe first, yeah, depends on the task and what I'm doing. I'm about here. I'm definitely not up here, because I've tried to build multi-flow work chains and the wheels come off the bus. And, it's not all about the prompt engineering, but I'm just focusing the prompt engineering aspect of it now. But we all think we're around here, but many of us, so a funny thing I used to do was, maybe it was mean looking back, but if someone would come into my office and says, okay, I would ask them to rate themselves on skill. I'm interviewing a new candidate and say, okay, well, this job requires SQL skills. How would you rate yourself in SQL? And they'd say, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'd give myself a 7 or an 8. Then I would ask them 3 standard SQL questions, like, okay, tell me the difference between an inner join and an outer join. Some other, SQL questions. Then I would ask them again afterwards, I'm like, now rate yourself as a SQL expert. And they'll be, yeah, more like a 4 or a 5. Because I could tell, like, a software engineer is not going to be a SQL expert. And then they're like, you have this perception that, I don't know, we know more than we think we do. And I'm guilty of that as well. So study this graph. And remember, this S-curve is not going to change as the models improve. There's always going to be a self-plateau here. So how do you get up yourself to be a 10Xer? Through this structured prompt engineering, right? So key prompting techniques, right? So my favorite one, and this is worth the price of admission, is don't prompt. What you do is you use ChatGPT to prompt, right? So those comic book strip kind of images you've been seeing, I didn't come up with that. So I initially started off with create an image with a computer reviewing a dashboard with a comic book style, right? And then I asked ChatGPT to craft a prompt, right? So pretty simple task here. So I'm asking basically to create the prompt for me. Then I use that prompt to generate the image, right? So, and you can see here, because after crafting that prompt and tweaking a little bit, I realized that I wanted when I say comic book, what do I mean? Well, I actually want pump art style. I want lots of energy, right? So you can see the boom, the pop here. But at the same time, this is a little bit from whatever, the 70s or 60s. But I wanted to be have a modern AI interface element, so it's kind of like a new style here. And again, we should talk about copyright and copyright infringement, but that's another topic for our podcast. We have lots of stuff on this, and we can talk about that in another case. But that's definitely something to be concerned about, right? So another one is write clear instructions. And because it's a lightning lesson, I'm going to go through these really quickly. Length, tone, structure, because I want to get to the juicy part. Ask it to adopt a persona. I don't know how many times people have skipped this step. And I even think that this is too short, because sometimes I have to drill down into what people mean about persona. So really adopting a persona. So I have different personas for different chaps. So now is your chance to be a split personality. Provide step-by-step instructions, such as chain of thought, tree of thought. That's another common one as well. And I'm skipping through these quickly because I think these are pretty basic. And then few shot prompting. I'm sure you know about this, where you provide a few examples. So you give it 1 example, 2 example, 1-shot prompting, multi-shot prompting. And, additional prompt techniques, specify the output length. And again, you can put these in the system prompts. Answer using text, use intent classification, classify the task type. Another thing you see as well is a lot of prompts that say, well, this dialogue is getting too long. When I use Claude 3.5 or 3.7 Sonnet, what I do is I take that whole text, put it into a document from the last conversation, ask it to summarize it, or just ask it to summarize that that conversation, and then move that conversation into another dialogue. And here's a few more techniques. Inner monologue is kind of interesting. All right. Again, like I said, I'm moving fast because this is 2 hours and I got to be move quickly here. So now I'm actually not going to spend too much time on reasoning models because there's a very good post from OpenAI about that. Because, for example, reasoning models, they really have chain of thought built in. So they initially tell you not to ask it to do step by step or explain your reasoning. I actually find it still works with 4.5, which I can't show you because I've run out of usage of 4.5. But check out, when you get the slides, check out this blog here, Reasoning Best Practices, the prompt with it. Okay. All right. So beyond basic prompting, so let's move into prompt engineering. And then Elena, set the ask a question about setting the temperature. You absolutely can, but that has to be in context, right? So if I was writing a novel, or I want to write an article, or I want to do something super creative like those comic book strip settings, I would set the temperature. And the temperature setting is something on your chat where it's just a little slide bar and you can ask it to be very creative. The problem when you set your temperature high, it can start to hallucinate. And when you're creating pop art kind of images, you want your prompt to hallucinate, right? So you want it to be creative. But when I'm writing code or I'm asking it to review a proposal, I don't want it to be creative. In fact, I turn it way down, right? So that's a great question. So it depends on the context, as we said before. So prompt engineering is a very interesting discipline. So here, for example, because what I'm going to share with you as well, I'm going to share with you some of these techniques. And actually, where do I have it here? I'm missing this document. There's another document I'm going to share with you. Sorry, give me a second while I find it. It was prompt examples of some of the ones I talked about. I apologize. I'm usually pretty good about getting this stuff ready. Let's see if I can get this to slide in here. Yeah, so I'll make this available to you as well. And yeah, so there's the prompt. And you can see now that that's a much clearer prompt. And just in the interest of time, I'm not going to run that prompt because I want to show you some of these other ones as well. So here I've provided a number of prompts for you. So this is an example of a chain of thought prompt, right? We're asking, really the key is we're asking to think step by step, right? So while that runs, I'm going to show you another prompt here. Here's what we call a text to application prompt. So for, why am I missing that prompt? So if I go here, Lovable is what we call a text application. So I give it a prompt. I asked it to build me a conference schedule. And it did a pretty awesome job on it because it went in here, built me a schedule, applied all the tabs, added favorites, which I can click here. I can clear my filters, develop in here, and I got speakers and schedule, right? Now, trust me, if I was to code this up, this could take me 40 to 100 hours. Now, this hasn't finished this here, but here was my prompt. If I can copy it. So I'm going to put it back in this document for you because I forgot to put it in here. And with apps like Lovable and all this stuff here, you don't actually have to say you're a CRM. It can be something like build. So for those of you who have never seen this before, this is kind of magic. let me go back to Lovable here. And I assume I'm still signed in. I'm going to give it the prompt. Oh, it's going to be public. Well, I don't care. So now you can see with that prompt, actually, why is it not doing that? Yeah, now you can see it's starting to, where's my code? That's why you always want to have stuff ready. I have a free version of this, so I might not be using the one here, but I basically, you put in the prompt and let me try it here. Let me see if I ran out of credits or not. So again, I'm going to do a very weak prompt here. So forgive me for this. Make the schedule in dark mode, right? I should be able to ask it for dark mode here, but it's giving me an error. Here's it giving me an error here. There we go. It's updating. So I'll let it run. I'll go off and do something else, right? So hopefully it's going to produce that in dark mode for me. But this is why prompt engineering is so important. Let me go back in the full screen here. So it's not just about using prompting to engineer applications, by the way. So prompt engineering, so you can be a developer, a coding developer, you can be a business person, you can still apply prompt engineering, right? But let me just talk a few things about it. Bad habits that engineers, whether you're just trying it out for yourself or you're a professional engineer, there's a couple of bad habits we're guilty of. Number one is, using prompts without structured methods. It's a trial and error trap. Hey, build me a schedule app, and it builds it. And like, I don't like this. Like, think about what the prompt is going to be. Use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is you're using, OpenAI or Grok, whatever you use. Build the prompts before you actually ask it to build you something. Like, use AI to build the prompt. So that's what we call the trial and error trap, where I'm just going to ask it to do something for me, and then I'm going to look at it. I don't like it, and then change back. That's a big issue. Second one is simplicity trap. And we assume that prompts are simple instructions. They're not, right? Prompts are, as we see here, prompts are not simple instructions. Like this, in my mind, is actually a very simple instruction. If I wanted to build an app, I would actually have a whole page of requirements to actually build the app. So because these tools are so good, and remember that curve, we keep making that same mistake that, simple instructions will build you an app. Yes, they will, but then you'll spend as much time refactoring that with AI as you would have if you just spent some time building it correct in the first place. And then the mindset trap, because when we code as traditional software engineers, we do what we do. It's called, you're basically building a rules-based system, right? If someone clicks on this, do this, if, else, then coding, it's all branch coding. That's what we call deterministic code. So when you were in college, you probably studied discrete math. But what we want to focus is on probabilistic ones, because at the end of the day, as someone asked about temperature, these are probabilistic methods, right? If you understand how a LLM is built, it's not sentient. No, it's built on a tech stack which has softmax in there, and softmax is one of the last things that an LLM does before, well, some of the architectures do before they output a token, which is basically they're trying to predict the most likely next token. So whether it's a piece of code or a pixel on a screen, that's what it's trying to do, right? So this mindset of you're accustomed to deterministic outputs, not probabilistic ones. So this is a big mindset you have to shift away from rules-based coding to what is a creative process with non-deterministic, probabilistic-based outcomes. That's kind of very important. So prompt engineering goes beyond that prompt design. It goes into the world of, now you're in the world of specialized technical discipline, right? A technical discipline here. So you want to leverage technical knowledge to enhance your models, and the goal is structuring, optimize cost and speed, refining prompts. And then it often involves a programmatic approach. And we say programmatic approach, we of course mean, a programming language, or that, because that's a programmatic approach. But also programmatic can be writing up a list of requirements, right? That's a programmatic approach. That's very different than writing in an ad hoc query, right? And then it's also systematic. And what we mean by systematic, it's a system. It's a repeatable, scalable, predictable system, right? So I know that's a lot of buzzwords, but they really do mean something, because if I'm interviewing something, ask them about their programming skills. I don't care if it's a marketing person or a software engineer. When I'm asking about prompting, I want to know that they have repeatable, do they have a system for generating good prompts? Because saying, yeah, I know how to use ChatGPT or Gemini or DeepSeek to generate an image, great, but who the heck knows what's going to come out the other side of it? Sorry, let me answer a question here from Derek. So yeah, I have a slide on this, but the tool I'm using here, it's called Lovable. It's pretty cool. See Lovable? Oh, it did build me a schedule. Don't know why I didn't do that. So see here, while I was in the background, I just went to dark mode. That's pretty cool. Like, come on. Who doesn't love AI? For the coders you're out there who are doing the FOBO, fear of being obsolete, like as a coder, I'm not worried about being obsolete. I still got to get this thing into production. I still have to QA it. I'm still missing 20 pages. And now because it's building me 2 pages pretty quickly, like, this thing is not working. It's not clicking here. It is not connecting to my database. Trust me, there's still plenty of work to do. But this is called Lovable. I have a list of these on the slides for you as well. And I'll show you a few others as well. All right, so where was I? I'm here, yeah. And this is the evolution of prompt engineering, because again, when people hear prompt engineering, they're like, yeah, prompt engineering, so what? It started with n-grams, if you know NLP. Then we got the BERT, then we got the GPT-3. And remember, GPT-3 is almost 5 years old at this point. 2020, hard to believe GPT-3, 175 billion parameter model is 2020. Time flies when you're having fun with AI. Then we got to instruction tuning. And this instruction tuning has been a discipline of NLP and computer science and people working in this field for decades. This is a big deal, right? Getting stuff out of AI is not just we've made it very casual and very easy, but this is the kind of stuff that people have written PhD dissertations on. In 2022, we got into advanced prompting techniques. Then we got in multimodal, generated images, generated video. I'm sure you've all used Sora. I should have tried that. And now with prompt engineering, we're using advanced tools. We're using RAG, agentic AI, reasoning models, right? APIs. All of these require prompt engineering, and prompt engineering has been recognized now as a kind of a discipline, right? Doesn't necessarily need to be a job, but it is an important skill set. And my argument is it's as important as learning to type or learning Excel. So again, you'll learn all about this at ODSC East, RAG, LLMs. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one here. Multimodal integration, because I want to get to the good stuff. So I talked about this before, systematic. So systematic optimization. You need to understand the LLM architecture's capabilities and limitations. That's why, if you just want to use it for casual reasoning, that's great. Casual usage. But if you want to really become that 10x prompt engineer, you don't have to build LLM models or build out the stack. Just learn about them. Just learn about how does the underlying LLM architecture work. Like, what is the difference between DeepSeek R1 versus OpenAI, G5 versus a reasoning model and a non-reasoning model? Because if you know the architectures, what they work well and what they don't work. Like some of the best people in prompt engineering right now, they all come from non-technical backgrounds, but they do have taken the time to study the LLM architecture, right? Another engineering discipline you are required to. Remember, we want to be systematic, repeatable again and again. How do you test? How do you verify? How do you validate? Because remember, all these people I'm saying, we don't trust AI. So how do you prompt in a way that you create trustable or trustworthy, I should say, outputs, right? And how do I take knowledge bases like vector databases and combine those with prompt engineering to create a desired output? So again, all of these are very important. So there's lots of different techniques out here. We've got prompt templates, chain of thought, single or few shot prompting, self-consistency, and react, right? Reasoning and acting. And what that looks like in code, again, this being a enlightening lesson, I'm going to go just pretty quickly. I'm going to share this with you as well. This is a Jupyter Code notebook, which, by the way, has Jupyter Code notebooks from Google has AI built into it. So I can ask it to write codes. I can ask it, what the heck is going on here? I've never read code before. Can you tell me what's going on here? Summarize this notebook. So the notebook it's giving you a number of programmatic prompts. So if you've never seen a prompt in code before, I recommend you do this. Like get yourself an OpenAI key, spend a few dollars, or use a free open source model or something here. But here we're using a GPT-4o mini model. We're giving it a role. We talked about roles and personas. And we're giving it a simple prompt, right? So we're asking it to explain a bubble sort, right? And see here, by the way, where Gemini is explaining this notebook. Let me just increase the screen here, because I know you guys always ask for that and I forget about it. Okay. So I assume, here is context prompt. How do you give a prompt an API context? Here's an example of how to do that. Here's one of giving it some input data to summarize the document. I'm going to skip over that. When we talked about priming, here's for priming, given a persona, you're a financial advisor. Again, we're using 4o mini. Here's a prompt template, which I'm just talking about. So a prompt template, you want to swap something in. So summarize the following article. So we use this all the time in VC. So we want to do something about robotics one day. The next day, it could be about biotech. So we're saying summarize the following research reports around whatever the category is, biotech, in this list here, and tell us if this addresses an unsolved problem. Tell us about the main authors, summarize the article's founding. That's what we call a template. So this is how you can apply systematic learning to something like this again. Here's chain of thought prompting. And basically with chain of thought prompting, we ask it to think step by step. And here's an example of a few shot prompting. We're asking the model to do something for us. We're asking it to output it in a certain format. And the format here is a JSON format, a very simple JSON format, not even nested. We want to know the 11. So basically, imagine the log files, you want to store them in the database in a JSON format, so MongoDB could use it. So we're asking it to giving it a couple of examples. And able to do that. And by the way, you can run this notebook yourself by just hitting that button there. Once you have your OpenAI key loaded. Self-consistency, and this is a cool one. You ask it to, you ask the model, you run the same prompt lots of times to make sure you keep getting a consistent result. So sentiment is a great example, right? Because if you ask a model to rate something, what the sentiment is, sometimes it'll be neutral, sometimes it'll be positive, given the sentiment. So you ask it to run it a bunch of times, and then you said, well, if you rated it, let's say you run it 50 times, I don't know, 50 times, 10 times, and 7 times it was neutral, and 3 times it was negative, then go with neutral. Because otherwise it's a random choice, and you don't want a random choice in that. But that is expensive, right? The more you run that model, the more it costs you. And then here we have report generation, which is something we do a lot. This is an example of using it for RAG. Well, actually, no, it's just report generation. And yeah, so that's a notebook. You can play around with programmatic prompts. And that notebook deals with some established prompt engineering techniques. And again, you know, when we do prompt engineering, it's modularization, version control, automated testing, optimization, efficiency. I'm going to skip through that one quickly. And someone asked me the apps here. So Lovable is one I'm very fond of. Bolt is another I like. Where's Bolt? This is Bolt. So Bolt, I asked it to build, I give it the exact same prompt. It didn't do quite a good a job as Lovable, but it actually built in some controls, which is nice. So again, is it me? Is it Bolt or my prompting skills? It's my prompting skills. So again, like that AI whisperer, if I'd done a better prompt job, I think both would have done a better job. Because see the way here, I didn't really want the schedule down here, right? I kind of wanted the schedule the way I have it here, right? Schedule and speakers. But if you look at my prompt, I didn't tell it that, right? So that's why you work more on the prompts and engineering that prompt, you're doing that stuff here. So with bolts is pretty good. So play around with that. And again, I don't have any paid version. These are all free. Another one I like is Rourke, even though it's not working for me today. Why is it not working for me today? Rourke is kind of interesting because it oh, come on, Rourke. Why aren't you working for me today? It actually builds an app. I am signed in. See here, it gives you a little app screen. And what's cool, both with Lovable and OpenAI, you can take your mobile phone, and you need a piece of third-party software, but you can actually run the app that you just built on your phone. So right now, I would say these text-to-app ones are very, very good for building out your app idea, right? So if you've got a great idea for the app, if you came to me 10 years ago, I would say, please give me $120,000. Now build it for you. Nowadays, I would say, go to Rourke or go to, not Rourke, but go to Lovable or something like that. And let's see in real time here if it's building the app. For some reason, when I go off these screens, it kind of stops building the ones for me. But while that's running, let's go back to our presentation. So these are text-to-app demos. Oh, and by the way, Lovable has got a great. So you think I'm just BSing you with me rattling on incessantly about prompt engineering and how important it is. Lovable Prompting Bible. Check this out. There it is, people. And I only actually checked this Bible out this morning. So it wasn't like I came to this page first and said, hey, I'm going to do a talk about this. And what does it say right here? Most people think prompting is just typing a request into AI and hoping for the best. Wrong. The difference between getting a mediocre response and having an AI build entire workflows for you is down to how you prompt. Mastering prompt engineering can help you. Well, congratulations, you're already on the course. So I guess I was ahead of that one. So that's included in the slides, but do check this out. They have a different approach to how to do it. And in my view, a bit of simplistic approach, but it's a quite good description. So as part of your prompt engineering learning journey, you should definitely read this and a few other resources I recommend, right? Come on, Rourke. Don't let me down. So what else do I want to cover in this here? So techniques, okay. So yeah, so this gets into, which we'll cover in the bootcamp, this gets into pretty sophisticated but easy to learn prompting techniques, right? Self-correcting prompts, because when AI fails, it's got to fix itself, because if it's running so fast and stuff like that. So dynamic prompting, self-correcting, stuff like that. And what we're starting to do now is we want to store our prompts, version those prompts, store the prompt itself, store the output, so we have that systematic, repeatable, so we can test them. So for example, what happens in some models here, see this code at this prompt style by side. When this is 4.0, right? But there's a version of 4.0 it's running. It could be running 4.0, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, right? In 2 days' time, OpenAI could change that version. It's still 4.0, but under the hood, they'll change the version. They might update I don't know, a prompting guideline or something. And all of a sudden, I run the exact same prompt. I'm going to get a different output. So let's say I'm firing up my chatbot. How should I check my chatbot every day if it's relying on ChatGPT 4.0 or Claude 3.7? You don't control that model. OpenAI, Anthropic, or DeepSeek, or whoever you're using controls that model. So what I would do is I would run that prompt. I already have the output from that previous prompt saved. Then I would compare the output of the latest prompt versus the oldest one, see if anything changed, right? So that's how you systematically do prompting, test prompts and all that stuff. So that's quite important to understand why that's important, right? So so you can save these off, you can save these prompts off, and that's how you build trust. So when your boss says to you, "I don't trust AI," explain to them how you can build trust into the system, even though it can still hallucinate. Because if it doesn't show the same output, then you don't provide the outputs to that prompt anymore, right? So we talked about these. So what people don't understand about prompting, there's a lot of different categories of prompting. And now we're getting into the world of large language models and AI. There's a thing called in-context learning. So when you hear about few shots and giving examples, that's what we call in context. The context, we give it examples which are context to learn. And there's 4 or 5 examples around that, right? And here's how it works. 0 shot means no examples. And here, I've kind of given you, again, because we're doing a lightning talk here, I'm going through this quickly. With examples, a couple of examples. Here's how to use in all these use cases, right? So I've given you a whole guideline out here to use for different kinds of prompts. Thought generation is the other category of prompt engineering that people are very, very fond of right now because of models like DeepSeek R1, O3 Mini, O1, and Claude 3.7, Sonnet, which is actually a hybrid thinking model. So these are what we call chain of thought prompting and stuff like that, right? Key techniques, again, are chain of thought, step-by-step improvements, few shot, contrastive, and uncertainty. So these are what we call the chain of thought. So O1 and O3 Mini actually has chain of thought built in, but you may not be using a model because O1 is very expensive. So I prefer to use chain of thought with a cheaper model because we're running lots of prompts systematically because we're using thousands of documents, and the reasoning models are just expensive. So I'd rather let OpenAI incur the cost of that, right? And again, here's how chain of thought works. We just looked at that in our prompt here. That's chain of thought, and you can play around with some of these yourself. Like just tell ChatGPT to try one of these, right? Or whatever you're using, ChatGPT or Anthropic or something. And then another one that I'm kind of favorite of is decomposition techniques, right? So let's say I'm trying to do a decision matrix, right? You ever use decision trees? It's not step by step, step 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like it's branching, right? Okay, so I'm going to go with choice A or B, and then choice A has got D, E, and F, or C, D, and E, or whatever, right? So these are, I want to break something down into simpler steps, right? So imagine, a couple of things. So here's tree of thought, right? Enables multiple reasoning paths, which is different from chain of thought. So if I go to my examples back here and I want to go to my tree of thought, which I believe I have one here. What I'm doing here is prompting. I'm giving it a task, clearly explore each option. And that's the word here, because again, I could tell it to give me a tree of thought prompting, but that's not how I communicate. Instead, what you find with prompt engineering, you kind of need to know how do you translate the category of prompts you're trying to do into English or whatever language you're using to get the prompts. When I'm thinking chain of thought, I'm asking do something step by step. When I'm thinking tree of thought, which is decision, trying to make a decision and critical alternatives, I'm asking it to explore each option. So if I put this prompt in here, you'll see a quite different result. Let's say chain of thought. So if I let this run here, so it's going to give me it knows the goal, improve profit margins. Now, see, all of a sudden it's going into, instead of doing step by step, it's starting with options, right? Because in the decision tree, you need different options, right? How many options is it giving me? Not many. It should give me more options. I can ask for that. Again, that's on me because what is going on with my prompt? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's still giving me more options, right? So see here, option A, increase prices by 10%. Option B, by 20%. C, 15%. Now it's evaluating, it's comparing the different options. It's doing a tree of thought, right? So impact on revenue, impact on cost, risk, and stuff like that. And then it comes up with a recommendation. So if I'd ask it this without doing a step-by-step, would it come up with the same recommendation? Maybe, maybe not. As the models get better, it probably would have come up with a better recommendation, especially if you're using a reasoning model, which I'm not, because I'm using a regular model. But how do you know? You're not going to know until it asks, until you see its prompting techniques, right? So that's why these different prompting categories and techniques are kind of important, right? So we have tree of thought, which I regard as the most influential. Least to most prompting is, and I know, I apologize, I'm going through this so fast because some of these are so much fun to play around with. Least to most, you know, again, the best way to figure out how to do this, just take the least to most. And again, these are not prompts I made up myself. I should have actually included a link to this. This is it's an archive paper. It's a study. Yeah, I'll find it. It was from a paper that's, it just listed them all out. I categorized them. These are my own categories because I try to say, okay, what's common here? But it listed off 50 prompting techniques, prompt engineering techniques. So you can play around with these yourself. Plan and solve prompting is interesting. Recursion of thought. Go through your thought process recursively. And I don't know, I'm not a fan of this program of thought because I think kind of do it anyway. And faithful chain of thought is interesting. Right. So anyway, play around with these yourself because we're running out of time here. And then again, I kind of give you kind of a cheat sheet here, which ones to use and when to use it and when to play around with it. And then the only one I would kind of add in here is self-criticism, because we actually use this a lot right now in 2024 and 2025. Because where do we use it for? We use it as LLM as a judge and AI as a judge, right? So very important. Other techniques, prompt injection, guardrails. Guardrails are very important. Like when you want to structure output, you can actually, let's say you're doing something for kids and you want to make sure it was always like K through 12 appropriate content. You can actually put guardrails around that content. How do you do that? You use prompt engineering. How do you make sure people don't hijack your chatbot or whatever? You use prompt engineering to prevent prompt injection. You can build graphs, decision graphs, and all that stuff. And you can ask a model to be consistent. All right, so I'm going to skip the agentic AI stuff because that's a little advanced, and we'll be doing more courses on that. What else have I got here? Agents, a lot of stuff on agents, but we don't have time. All right, so if you found this interesting, we have 8 courses coming up in our boot camp, and we'll be sprinkling this prompt engineering throughout it. So when we do the coding, we'll be using prompt engineering for that. When we do the machine learning, traditional machine learning, we'll be using prompt engineering for that. When we get to understanding how LLMs work, we'll be using prompt engineering for that. So listen, guys, you know, I talk too fast, so hopefully you're not thinking too slow, but I appreciate your patience and sticking with this. So hope this was informative. So really enjoyed doing this because I learn a lot when I put together these talks.